Welcome everybody from the Sparx Systems YouTube channel. It's great to have you here today. Once again, we're using Enterprise Architect to develop our urban parking system repository. And lately we've been looking at a few features around ArchiMate. And today we're going to look at a different viewpoint, the Motivation Viewpoint. So welcome Stephen, great to have you here today. Can you tell us a little bit about the Motivation Viewpoint in ArchiMate?
Thanks for the introduction, Scott. And as always, very delighted to be here. Yeah, the motivation viewpoint is an interesting one. And just to take this back a little bit, it's part of the ArchiMate framework and specification. And that is or has become pretty much the de facto language for representing enterprise architectures. And remember, enterprise architectures are an important modeling technique to model aspects of the enterprise and how it's going to operate and perform, and right from a high view of strategy and business right down to a technology level. So it covers all bases, and the ArchiMate, like I said, is the de facto or lingua franca, if you like, for developing these models. As always, let's get started by changing our perspective. So if we look into the top right-hand corner of the application here, you can see I've been doing some work with Microsoft Azure, some cloud-based models. I'm going to drop this down to list the perspective sets, and we're looking at enterprise architecture and the ArchiMate perspective. So I'm going to select that perspective, and the tool changes our focus to be concentrating now on enterprise architecture and specifically ArchiMate. There are a number of patterns that are available here. We can see here we've got the motivation viewpoint, requirements realization viewpoints, and we'll look at that. And the pattern allows you to inject a sort of a starter model or for you to start working with this, and gives you some examples of the kind of things that you can put into the into your viewpoint. So there's some flexibility with the viewpoint, Scott. You don't have to include all the elements. You can include the things that you want, but it's a way of kind of creating a subset of the kind of elements that you want in a particular view for a stakeholder. So I like to do things from first principles. So I'm going to close this builder page, but as always, I encourage people to return to it and get the productivity gains by simply clicking on the create model and injecting that model into your repository. We'll close the builder page. Now we need to find a location in our project browser for this viewpoint. Let's go in here, and we've got enterprise architecture, business architecture, and we'll keep this up at this level, and we'll say we'll add another package here using the package icon on the project browser toolbar. Click on that, and we'll put in motivation viewpoint as the name. So package only, I could create a diagram at the same time. I'm not going to. And we put that in. Now, Scott, as always, I like to put in notes for these elements, the packages as I create them. In fact, in the element, whether it's a package, a diagram, an element, a feature, it's good practice to put those in. Newcomers to the model will be able to see that. Now, I didn't make this up. This has come from the ArchiMate specification, and you can see it describes that motivation viewpoint. So even if someone didn't know anything about ArchiMate when they were coming in, they can read that and get an idea. I didn't, like I said, didn't make that up. That came from the specification, and we go over to the library here. So I'm going to click on the library tab down here. We can see that the ArchiMate specification is there. And if I was to double click on that, that will launch the ArchiMate specification in a tab on another monitor. I'm just going to drag that on and show you what's happened there. So encourage people to look at that specification and learn it. If you've been doing doing some exams for ArchiMate to get qualified in the language, then you'll probably be familiar with the specification. The other thing is guidelines here, Scott. We've got those ArchiMate modeling best practice guidelines. They're just examples that I've created for the sake of this video, but I encourage organizations to create their own ArchiMate modeling guidelines. So we've got a a motivation viewpoint there. Let's leave it up at that level, and we'll create a diagram, Scott. So the kind of diagram we want is the motivation one there, and we'll choose that motivation view there, create diagram, and you can see now if we put our Toolbox out, we've got a number of different elements, a richer set that we had for the stakeholder one. We're going
And
to
I
focus.
noticed for every single viewpoint, the toolbox looks slightly different.
Yeah, Scott, that's because the specification, and let me just drag that onto the this monitor as well. Each viewpoint, so the motivation viewpoint here in the specification, gives you a list of the things that you're allowed to put onto the diagram. When I say allow, it's not strict. It's not like you're going to get into trouble if you put the wrong things on, but it's just giving you some pointers as the kind of things that you might want on this.
But EA is helping you adhere to the standard by giving you the tools that you need when you need them.
Exactly, Scott, and giving you the prompts that you need to go, okay, here are the things that I can put on there. You can also always just go to another toolbox if you want to, simply if you want some other elements. Like I said, this isn't someone being draconian and telling you that you must have these things. Always with modeling, the important thing is the audience. The diagram itself is just a vehicle for creating a narrative, disseminating information to a particular audience, so it must be relevant to them. Let's create an element here. We're going to start again with the stakeholders. So we're going to look through our repository now. We want to look for something for the local business owners. So let's see if we can find anything that's got that. I'm going to hit the Control F keys on my keyboard there. That's the quick shortcut to get that up. I could have got it from another location up on the ribbons, but I'm not going to do that. And I'm going to take local business. That will be enough perhaps to find it, that element. There it is there, local business owners. There's a number of different things that come up. There's some things in the notes here as well, or the object there as a business owner. I wanted that's an artifact, but this is the one I want. I'm just going to find that in the project browser now and see whether that is the one that I want, using the little location icon, find the context item. Let's have a look at that. And yes, it is. Look at it. It is in our stakeholder viewpoint. So we've already put that in our stakeholder viewpoint. So we want to reuse that one. So we'll go back to our motivation one and just drag that one onto the diagram. So encouraging reuse, Scott. Don't go and reinvent the wheel. I'm going to turn off this this presentation mode that I put on, show direction mode. I had those on in the helpers panel. Just going to turn those off now, and let's get started. So what kind of things do we want to put in here? Well, the next thing we want to put in really is a driver. And so the driver that we're going to talk about here is customer access. So this is the key thing for the business that they want. They don't want to have their customers like me looking for a toy shop and not being able to park outside their shop. And so that's an incredibly important thing, the customer access. So we'll put that on there and we'll create a relationship between those, and EA again does the work for us. We've got only a couple of items there. I'm going to choose the associated with one there, and let's go and put some notes on that as well. So, and we'll explain what we mean by customer access, because it could mean something different to different people. So the notes help you understand the ability of potential customers to conveniently reach and patronize local businesses. This fundamental driver impacts foot traffic, dwell time, and ultimately business revenue. So interesting that we might want to now do an assessment as well. So let's have a look at that, and we'll quickly go through these things, and we'll say, look, let's put an assessment on there, and I'll come back and put the notes in just a minute. But from that driver, I'm going to put in an association there, and let's do that. And now let's put in a goal. And again, we have to make these quantitative if we can. So again, we can just drag the goal from the project browser, and there we've got that. And we'll say that this influences that one. So sort of shaping up a little bit like our stakeholder one, but it's going to go a little bit further than that. So now the interesting thing is, if you look onto the toolbox, you can see that about 3 down from the bottom on the motivation concept there, we've got a principle. So this principle is going to be an important one. So we're going to put that in there. and let's drop a principle onto that canvas there. And the principle is increase. That's not the principle I want, I don't think. Let me have a look. No, customer first parking is the one I want. So no problem there. I've had something in my buffer, and I'll just move that over and just select all of that and put in this customer first parking. Now, what does that mean? It sounds like a good principle, but what does it actually mean? And we'll have a look at that. And we can have principal types, Scott. We could, define some tag values and say that we want these to be particular types. And this is sort of like a guiding principle stating that customer parking needs to take priority over all other potential uses of parking resources. This principle ensures that parking decisions consistently prioritize the needs of potential customers. So, really...
If local business doesn't look after their customers, they won't continue shopping there. Yeah,
that's exactly right. So let's put in, I think that one we want... influences there. Yes, we do. And let's now look at some requirements, Scott. So now we've got this principle in place. Let's look at short-term customer parking. So this one is a requirement, and so we'll drop a requirement on there. You see this is coming down now to a lower level where we can start to kind of think about the kind of things that you might want to do to ensure that this goal is met and the driver is taken care of. So short-term customer parking there, and let's put some specifics in this one. We'll go back and fill these out with notes as well. But a specific requirement for minimum of 20 parking spaces with 90-minute maximum duration. This requirement directly implements the time-limited parking principle. So you will have seen that, and it may frustrate you at times. You might want to go and see a movie, but the time is only an hour parking, and you can't use that. But the point of it is to keep that flow of cars coming in and out of parking spaces. So let's look at this one. This requirement here. Let's have a look at the relationships we've got. We've got realizers there. We'll use that one, and now you can see, Scott, that we've got these relationships here. We haven't put this one in here. We'll put that relationship in, and let's go and have a look at our that's influences there. So let's make it associated with. Let's go and have a look at our narrative here, which we can do with this inline specification. And we haven't put that many notes in, and so you'll see what's going to happen. We've got things that are missing notes there, so we can quite easily
identify the gaps.
exactly and go, I haven't done that. Now, Scott, having done that, we've seen the transition. Daisy, I've just closed that diagram. I'm going to open it back up again, no harm. And we've seen that evolution, I guess, from the stakeholder through the driver, the assessment, the goal, right, the principle, and then the requirement. I could link that requirement straight up to that goal if I wanted and take the principle out of there, but I like to incorporate it in there. I could have attached it separately, and each modeler will perhaps do different things with the language, and the language is flexible enough to take care of that. Scott, I'm going to get you to do some of your time travel magic, and I'll see you back here in a few seconds when I've completed the diagram.
Welcome back. We've got our motivation viewpoint, and we filled out a few different areas covering, customers and a few other topics. It's great that you can use pan and zoom to zoom in, so we can have a look at some of the, competitive analysis and delivering needs. So perhaps you can tell us a little bit about this diagram and what it communicates to the audience.
Thank you, Scott, and good to be back. Yeah, this diagram has been completed now. Let's just do something quickly we can do to see whether we have finished all the narrative side of this diagram. So remember, we can use the inline specification view here by clicking that element there, and we can see now that the elements all have notes. And as I click on one of these, it's going to take me to the particular note. But it's good to see all of them in a single place like that. So I'm going to close that now. I'm going to enrich the diagram a little bit, Scott, by putting in some diagram notes. Now, those notes for the diagram actually exist in the notes panel, but I can quickly get them into the diagram as well. So if I wanted to print the diagram or make the diagram part of a documentation or publication, I can simply grab a note here from the Common Elements Toolbox, and I encourage people to look at that and some of the other elements there and drop a note on. And I could start typing in some notes here, for example, this diagram, and start telling the story. But I've actually already told the story inside the diagram note. So I'm just going to remove that. If you go back and look at that, the diagram notes there, a simple right mouse click to bring up the context menu here and the advanced option, and I can say link to diagram note. So that then will make that note appear. I can reshape that a little bit. Say, look, I want it to be, a little bit wider than that. And I can also, change the color of that as well by simply going and saying, I want that to be a color. It's a bit bright for me. I'll tone that down a bit. So just a bit of color magic there in Enterprise Architect. The other thing, Scott, is that the diagram has got a number of connectors on it. And while they have got a particular style, some are dashed, some have got open arrowheads, some have got triangular arrowheads, I can, as always, use a legend, so a dynamic legend. It's a kind of very useful feature of Enterprise Architect. And let's have a look at that. I'll just close this Enterprise node here. I'll go to my libraries there and I'll say ArchiMate Connector Legend, and I'll drag that onto the diagram. And you can see now that the diagram connectors have been changed in different colors, and I can simply look them up. I can say, well, what is that this purple one here, and you can see that the purple one is a realization, and I can modify that. Deliberately left one in there. You can see ArchiMate realization, but I can turn that off, and let's go down and look at the connectors and just show you very quickly how that's set up. And I can look at this one here, and I can say ArchiMate and look for the realization one there, and I can just simply type realization there, and you can see now how the diagram will change. So you may not even want to use the words that ArchiMate prescribes for this connector. You may want to have your own more business-friendly terms that people can understand in your organization. So long as there's consistency about it, no harm done there. I'll save that, and you can see now that the legend's updated, and that's dynamically changing the color of those connectors. And you can do the same thing with the elements as well, if you wanted to, show drivers in one color and assessments in another. But the icon there tells you which one it is. So
then you have two legends on a diagram at the same time.
Yeah, Scott, you can have any number of legends on a diagram at the same time if you like, and you can just say apply auto color there. If I turn that off and save that, you'll see that that will then go back to neutral,
right,
and that turns that legend off. But if I chose another legend, then I can put that on. And of course, I could have one that's showing other aspects. There might be, something to do with priority, and I could have something that's coloring the elements based on their priority or business criticality or importance. So we do have a video on legends. I encourage people to go and look at that, where we discuss a lot of those finer details. But Scott, that's the motivation viewpoint in ArchiMate. Again, one of my favorite ones, because it's taking something right up from that high level, from customer access, right down to lower level. Now, I can put in, just before we go, I just want to show you how flexible this is. I can put in the business owner there. I think that dropped off the color at one point. We had fine in the diagram there. Let's go back and find that in the browser, and it was there. And let's put that onto our motivation viewpoint. I think we had that connected before. I'm not sure. So let's have a look what happens. No, it's not. It's there. And let's drop a connector in there, put an association there, and another association. So diagrams, Scott, are always a work in progress, and you don't need to start at the top and work your way down. You can, start at different points, and just so long as the diagram gets finished. So again, I can line those up using the grid lines there, and that's a completed diagram, Scott.
Excellent. Well, thanks once again for a nice comprehensive overview of ArchiMate. To our audience, we'd like to thank you for joining us today. It's always great to have you here with us, learning about Enterprise Architect and in particular ArchiMate today. If you have any questions for Stephen around ArchiMate or around the Motivation Viewpoint, feel free to reach out using the credentials listed below. He has his LinkedIn credentials and his website listed in the video description below. As always, if you've enjoyed the video, we encourage you to like, comment, and subscribe to the Sparx Systems YouTube channel. Stephen, thanks for showing us how Enterprise Architect can be used to create the motivation viewpoint in ArchiMate. It's been fantastic to see how powerful and easy it is. And I really like seeing the specification view as well, so you can quickly identify any gaps in the notes and you can tell a nice comprehensive story which is easy to understand by business users and technical users alike.
Always a pleasure, Scott.